Shailu Tipparaju, as we all call him lovingly as Shailu. He's a widely published author, educator, and a speaker. Shailu was recognized as one of the top 100 global education pioneers. He's an active contributor in interoperability, standardization, accessibility, cybersecurity, and works with industry bodies like IEEE and IMS Education Global. Shailu's mission is to enrich and simplify people's lives through self-discovery and education. And he's very passionate about inclusive education, equal access, and ethical and fair usage of technology to solve big problems in society. This is what I could gather for him. And there is more to him. So Shailu, over to you to lead the panel. Thank you very much.
Very thank you, Akshay, for those warm words, and Surya and Srini and TAL Radio team for setting this up as a wonderful stage to celebrate World Kindness. I'll start off with, before we welcome our wonderful guests here, one of the discussions I had with the TAL team is why one day for kindness, November 13th. Isn't every day supposed to be a kindness day? And Sai gave me a brilliant, insightful answer, as he always does, because he said there needs to be a day to celebrate it. So we remember that for the next 365 days and refresh that celebration as a way to rediscover ourselves. The focus for us is 4 fantastic world leaders who have spent their time in education. We very warmly, on behalf of TAL, on behalf of United Nations Sustainability Goals Initiative, as we celebrate the World Kindness Day on 13th of November, and remember that for the rest of the year, as we revisit this again, I welcome Ricardo, I welcome Jeffery, I welcome Lord, and I welcome Kelly. And I have been reading furiously about their contribution to the world as world leaders. And I have to admit, it's been very inspiring reading what each one of you have done. And even as we were warming up to the preparation a few minutes ago, simple things are always the most powerful things. When Kelly said, we need to find time for others to discover ourselves, and that is the only way we enrich outside before we enrich inside, spiritually, intellectually, financially, as a global citizen. And a few words about Kelly. And exactly like Akshay, I suffer the same, which is there's nothing to moderate with a panel so amazing and elite, with so many accomplishments, but humility at the core. They come across as very simple people with very powerful ideas. The vision for every child in Latin America to benefit from exceptional educators, beginning with a vision that started in New York, has expanded to offices in Sao Paulo, Mexico City. There's been a global footprint. Sustainability has been obviously at the heart of Kelly's mission for many decades now. And having been in the States, having spent in Brazil, she feels more Brazilian than American, but I think she's more a global citizen for all of us, spreading the same warmth and affection everywhere through education, and has built a lot of partnerships globally, brought in that light of how do we build human-centered training? How do we empower teachers because they are force multipliers? And how do we bring in that awareness to others that we can include everyone? Those are the words I would take away before we ask questions. So before I go into introducing the other panel members, Kelly, anything you wanted to share with the panel as we dive in?
Well, I just wanted to thank you all. It's so nice to be on the panel with you. And I think, like I said, this is a very special issue to focus on. And I think you said it right. You know, kindness is behind everything that we do. And part of being kind, okay, it's the everyday little things that we do, but it's also the bigger things that we do. And those of us who have chosen education, or in my case, eventually chosen education as my focus and commitment, you know, I think through what we can offer an education, not only kindness is encouraged, but equal opportunity and inclusion and a better world connection with each other. This all only comes from education. You know, I come from a small town of 6,000 people in northern Michigan, you know, and I'm in the second, third, fourth largest city of the world now. So, you know, it's so beautiful when you can meet different kinds of people from different kinds of places. And I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We'll get to the questions. So in no particular order is what every moderator would say, but I always choose the most intelligent, kind, and affectionate people like my mom, executives like Kelly. I always go with, if everyone agrees, the kindest possible person in the room is always the women power. We have celebrated that for many, many centuries, and it's my pleasure to have one such elite member in our crew. And you talked something about alliances and how people have to come together to have conversations. One such alliance we look at is, where is the next generation going? Where is the young generation going? Are we doing enough to guide them in the right direction? An alliance called World Youth Alliance does a ton of work, the WYA. And having served as the president of WYA for 6 years, I'm sure Lord has contributed in many geographies, and we are very pleased to welcome Lord into this particular panel to share some of the things as far as questions we have on how do we include everyone? How do we bring them into the journey? Any words you want to share with us, Lord, and very welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Shailu. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. I think these are very exciting topics. I agree with Kelly. And I agree with Shailu, basically that, you know, why just one day for World Kindness Day? And I'm excited because I want to share that, you know, through our program, through our Human Dignity curriculum, students around the world are trying to pursue this, you know, being kind 365 days every year. That sounds kind of like, how is that possible, right? How could that happen? But later on, you know, I'll try to share some of these stories, you know, of young people on how they're able to transform themselves, you know, even from a very young age, such as from kindergarten, you know, pursuing kindness, you know, in their own communities. So again, I think today more than ever, we need kindness, right? And being in the education sector had some, you know, couple of challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic, but at the same time, it has unleashed a lot of opportunities. And so I'm delighted to be part of this panel to share, you know, some of these stories, you know, of hope, of inspiration, of how young people continue to strive to pursue the good and to pursue kindness amidst the difficulties, especially of living in the pandemic. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to our conversation.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. You know, think about who has the ability to inspire people at a very large scale is leaders. It's exceptional leaders who show the way, they know the way, they have gone the way. And one such panel member we have has worked a lot in the organization leadership, in business development, in sales enablement, bringing the brand alive, bringing partnerships together to enable strategic goals. We warmly welcome Jeffery Beckham into the panel and would love to hear his initial words. We will dive into something he very passionately believes in on how Chicago scholars, and I will admit there's some bias. I'm a Windy City, Chicago guy. I've been here for many decades, but I will be equally affectionate and kind to everyone in the panel. But Jeffery would love to hear, what's your thoughts initially on quality education? What's the impact that Chicago scholars are doing? Would love to hear, and welcome.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share the stage with such esteemed panelists. You know, Chicago Scholars for the last 25 years as an organization has worked to help first generation and low income students complete college and understand how they show up as leaders and enhance that leadership to amplify the things that they're doing to change the world for the better, and get into that work through either their career or starting their own social impact businesses, or applying that work through community service and civic leadership opportunities. I think that at the core of what we do, kindness is critically important to helping students build their own profiles and experience and leverage their own empathy to utilize their leadership, which we define as influence, to make a organization, a world, something better, to do just that. And I'm excited to share how we've done that work and how our students are showing up. We get young people who are now, and we're in our 25th year of existence. And some of our young people are, mid-career, senior professionals doing work to try to make their area of the world, of the globe, that much better through kindness and impact. And so I'm very excited today to share the stage with these panelists and discuss more about what Chicago Scholars is doing, but really more about what these young people who are dynamic and outstanding and driven, all first generation and or low income students from Chicago, what they're doing to impact the world. So thank you for having me today.
Very welcome, Jeffrey. One of the things educators, and I'm one, is what we look in students. And my students can vary from a 6-year-old who I meet and build a Lego with them, all the way to an executive who's 75 years old, building their 15th or 16th company, and yet have the same excitement and energy of a 6-year-old. It's almost an envious position to be as a teacher, because you can observe students in various degrees of intelligence, emotional and social. And there is one thing I wanted to say for our next panel member. It's not what you say, it's what you do that demonstrates you as a person, be it servant leadership, civic leadership. We all know Ironman. Not many actually know that there is Ironman marathon. And one of the things I have seen as my classmate, as my colleague, and I've seen this person organize people, his presentation skills, while very, very strong, his emotional skills are at a whole different league. There is not a single person I can imagine in the Harvard community who do not know Mr. Ricardo. And I'll tell you why that happens. And I'm not saying it because he has done amazing things like being the youngest congressional nominee, very actively in the political arena, with an intent to serve in a very broad capacity. He has been actively engaged in real estate businesses, which are industrial, commercial, serial housing, assisted living across many geographies. What stands out for me is he can pull off energy that is almost near impossible in how I see it. Every time I talk to him, he's in a different city, talking to a different leader about a different project. That kind of energy is what we look for in this next generations to carry on as sustainable for many, many decades, to bring value to the society, the community, and inspire generations across the board, including me as a teacher. So we warmly welcome Ricardo in his active social engagement and taking the time. Any few words, Ricardo, before we dive into the questions from each panel member?
Well, first of all, that person you described sounds amazing. I'd love to meet him, but Shailu, your leadership, your innovation, you definitely get people to think in different perspectives and really stretch their thinking. And as a result, they grow and they learn. So, I'm grateful to be sharing this OPM 60 cohort with you and this wonderful group of panelists. Shailu and I met because we were doing a bunch of Zoom sessions online, preparing for all the cases. So when we arrived to campus, everyone had done all the cases because we did it on Zoom. So he always says, Ricardo, you're like the glue. So a little bit about my background. So I'm in a family-owned business, privately held. So we do industrial, residential, commercial, and senior housing. We also do hotels and restaurants abroad. We're in about 4 countries. But since 2016, I've been really heavily involved in politics. So my father ran the Democratic primary and also as an independent in the presidential race. And then I ran for Congress a few times. So in 2020, I won my election and I moved to Texas. It was during the pandemic, so it was a bit of a tricky time. And, what I was sharing with Shailu is, my district was one of the largest districts. So we had Corpus Christi, a little bit of Austin, and then rural Texas. So when you're campaigning in these parts, everyone's like, oh, let's go remote. Oh, that's easy. But when you're going to rural Texas, you'd be surprised that even in the 9th largest economy in the world, they have lack of internet connectivity. In some of these places I was campaigning, I barely had cell service. So, talking with a lot of the parents, they'd say, well, I have 5 children, but I have like 2 laptops. So how am I going to get my kids? And the other one's the lack of education for the parents. Like, I don't even know how to use these systems. I find it embarrassing that I need to learn how to use this. Can you help us? So it was quite interesting because there was a gap. And imagine this is in the 9th largest economy in the world. Imagine the rest of the world. So everyone's like, oh, we'll go to remote. So unfortunately, I feel education was strongly impacted due to the pandemic, but we might have taken a step back and maybe we take 2 steps forward because, on the positive note, we have amazing MOOCs and online courses. The tech has really improved, exponentially. And now we can have like a hybrid approach, which is great. Myself, I've taken some online courses just to, keep, my mind stimulated and be able to connect with the online learning community. And I think technology has really transformed education. So I'm looking forward to see what happens. As far as kindness and compassion, I think that's something that needs to be, not only is it taught at home, but it needs to be learned. I feel politics at the moment is very polarized. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of division, and we need to get, people with kind hearts and compassion. And we need to get more of those people in politics because unfortunately, we don't have enough of that. So, that's kind of my 2 cents. So I'm not sure if you want me to go in a certain way, Shailu, but.
Good. We'll come back, I think, letting the flow. Who would have known that you guys have not interacted and worked with each other? The way you guys are sharing your thoughts are so in line. It's almost like a symphonic. As an orchestrator and moderator, it makes it so easy for me. You don't have to work really hard. A good conversation, when I ask, what is a good conversation? They say, if you learn something new, that's a good conversation. A great conversation is if it drives you to take action on something, that's a great conversation. What I have learned in the last 20 minutes that hearing about your journeys, we talked about education as availability at scale. So we'll go to Kelly and talk about things that are very close to her heart, but also the relevant topics right now, which is access across countries has now become more democratized because of technology. Data has become cheaper. Social media has become an inherent part of our lives. We sleep with the glaring screen, we wake up a glaring screen. So it has become an inherent part of our life. Now, how do we convert that advantage of access into improving literacy? Kelly, would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I think for us, we have been focusing from the very beginning on the multiplier. We've been focusing on the public schools, starting with the leadership from the public schools, the directors, the principals. We have a leadership and coaching program that we've been doing in Mexico throughout the country since 2009. We started out 100% in person. And I would say all of our programs are super human capital focused, very much heart to heart, very much emphasizing the importance of the individual and their example and how they connect with the student or their peers in the classroom and in the school and in their larger community. So we have been working with K through 12 with this program. We started out, as I said, 100% in person. Initially, we thought that was the only way to go to really be so human capital focused, but in order to scale and to offer more widely, we started with a flip model in 2013. And then to continue along that scale, we went to a blended model, again, with these school directors and leaders from the state governments. And so we were using a blended model when the pandemic started and when the schools closed. And in Mexico, school became a TV event. And Even the poor, most of them have televisions in Mexico, but many people have more than one child. And so that brought a lot of challenges. Very few other devices in many cases, especially in the remote locations. Fortunately, we were able to flip to a 100% online program within a week over the Easter vacation because we had that experience, and it was really easy in this program. And we addressed the literacy through, the leadership in the school and things like this. In Brazil in the same year, in 2009, we started with a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, called STEM Brazil. We've also, that was our first cross-border program, took it to Mexico, was originally called STEM Mexico. Now we call it Sistema Educando. Educando is the name of our organization. And that was still 100% in person, the execution, the training for the teachers, for the physics, chemistry, biology, and math teachers. And we had a platform, everyone was on the platform, but we didn't do the training through the platform. That was more, follow up and connecting scenarios. So that had to change. And that's been an evolution over the last year or so. And we've been addressing that we started out with high schools, went to middle schools, and then grade schools. So all kinds of science and math literacy, let's say. Wonderful. And these are our two main focuses.
That's phenomenal. I mean, there's one thing that came across in our discussions gearing into this panel is something I found very, very powerful and inspiring. Universal literacy. Is it the heart of education in its primary definition? And how do you see universal literacy?
I think it's so much part of education, and you see that happening. I mean, I think through the countries over the years, things have been very, very different. But what has been a leading indicator for education to change? I think things like the PISA, you end up influencing education through the PISA test, and whereas many countries had their own curriculums, in some ways we're leveling up because of these international tests and these international conversations taking place at more a global level. That's my point of view.
Great. Any reflections from Lord, Jeffery, and Ricardo on what you just heard from the mission and the execution that Kelly and team are putting on the ground? Any initial reflections or thoughts from hers?
No, kind of going back to what we said, it's kind of, that's incredible that the work you did and being able to, implement remote. I think it was a shock for a lot of parents, and, I'm that's incredible. Would love to learn more. And, I'll just give you my perspective as running for office. And,
yes, please.
I guess the biggest things in my district was education, and the kids, everyone was very strong on education. It was very, very important. And my district was 70% Latinos. The second thing was the small businesses was also very, very important. A lot of the immigrants that came, they couldn't get the help from the government, so they were lacking with the information, and they didn't know how to apply for the PPE loans. But I guess those are two of the top issues in my district.
And Ricardo, extending that from your perspective, you have seen education delivered at very high elite worlds. Not everyone can walk into the HBS campus. That's a 400-year-old campus. Has technology in education brought us together, or has it isolated us? How do you see it?
Well, I think, a lot of people now are kind of living in a virtual world, but I'll make an example. I've been taking yesterday I was looking at online courses on Coursera, and you can take from universities in Brazil and Russia and multiple languages. I found it was incredible. Now I've been doing, since the pandemic, something called the Public Leadership Credential with the Harvard Kennedy School Online. And you're there online in the community, and you start connecting on Zoom, and a lot of people have PhDs, MBAs, they just want to even connect. And then you have someone who's maybe just finished college and doesn't know what to do next. So you had a wide range of experiences, and I found that incredible. And I definitely, I've been taking online courses since 2010 and for fun. And I've been seeing the system, and what the systems are today are a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And the amount of content and everything, it's really leveled up. So even though the pandemic might have hit us, below the belt, during the pandemic, now we've taken 3-4 steps forward, because now everyone is onto this online learning community. It's all about continuous learning. People from all ages. I spoke to one of my best friend's mom, and she's like, "Oh, I found this edX thing. I started taking these history classes. Now I've taken 5 classes. I feel like my brain is so stimulated. It's so exciting." So it democratizes education. So you don't no longer have to be on campus to learn. So you can take a Harvard Business School core online. There's HBS online. There's edX. Even just from the Harvard perspective. So now someone in Uruguay can take a course from Harvard, or someone in Kenya, as long as they have a laptop or internet access. One of the things I really enjoyed, I don't know if you've heard about the 1 laptop per child program.
Yes.
I don't know what happened to that program, but I hope something like that happens. I was during this course, we were looking at how the average GDP per capita changes based on mobile phones. If you're able to give mobile phones or laptops to people, now the government can contact them, send them aid, track, and deliver services more effectively. So I do believe that I'm more optimistic. I know a lot of people are pessimistic with everything, but I'm very optimistic, and hopefully we can put this pandemic behind us, and we would have been we've become very innovative. We've had this desire to connect with people, and I think we appreciate we miss that interaction. We miss that. What I like about politics, which I think we all miss with the in classroom, which you don't get, is every time you shake someone's hands, there's this kinetic energy. If you break it down to the atom, there's this magical moment. So we're missing that. But virtual is still very strong. And as you've seen, Shailu, before we went, we were online. We did 1 week case study every morning. I would have to wake up at 7 a.m. One morning I had a dream that I arrived 45 minutes late and everyone was angry at me. I woke up 10 minutes before. I'm like, okay, I couldn't miss it. But when we arrived on campus, we already bonded. So what would have taken 3 weeks to achieve, we achieved on day 1. Like I remember Shailu actually put me on the spot. Shailu, troublemaker Shailu. He made me, he's like, can you name everyone in the room? There was 25 people. I was like, oh, this is gonna be tough. There's no name tags or anything. And I was able to name every single person. Now I recognize their face, I know their name. Obviously, I didn't know how tall they were because I'd only see them on Zoom. So one guy, Mac, this German guy, was twice the height of Shailu. I didn't know he was that tall, but
it's a great way, the way you're connecting education and human connection. They can't go independent of each other. I wanted to ask Jeffrey a couple of things in how he sees from a quality education, which is one of the sustainable development goals of United Nations. The work that Chicago Scholars has done, it's not just having access to something digitally or in person, but if you don't even know it exists, you have done work with more than 5,000 first generation people who do not have access to, from an income perspective, from a social access. What has been your take on college alone is not enough, in your opinion, as you think about it strongly? And second, the impact of pandemic, and how can we bring access and kindness to all people and make it inclusive in their journey? From a Chicago Scholars perspective, would love to hear yours, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think you said something very critically important to the work. First and foremost, is the recognition that you don't know what you don't know. Many of our students who come from communities that have been hardest hit by the pandemic and a lot of the social justice things that happened post George Floyd's murder last summer in Chicago, our students, are oftentimes not given the opportunity to see not just college, but what the outcomes of their lives can be from having valuable mentors and other resources in their neighborhoods. Many of our students, even in Chicago on the South Side, with all of the wealth that lives 3 to 4 miles away from them, live in neighborhoods and communities where they don't even have food. You know, they're in food deserts. And so this idea and concept of the outcome or the prospects of quality education and what it can lead to them for the long-term prospects of their life don't always connect. And so, you know, a lot of our work revolves around exposure at the earliest stages, working through partnership with other organizations who are on the ground, whether they're working with elementary school students or middle school students, to help students see that through work and effort and access to some of the new tools that exist, a lot of Chicago's educational tools and the library systems went digital in the pandemic, which, you know, created and democratized access to education, as Ricardo said. It's connecting them to those opportunities that exist. And so we serve as a major convener in that. I always tell folks, Chicago Scholars is like the airport. If you're a young person that has desire to achieve something in your life, if you come to us, we can help you figure out what that is, whether it's through college or entrepreneurship or the programmatic opportunities our programs built in partnership with organizations like Facebook and Leomer and many, many others. We have a pathway that students can then take on through their own agency themselves to walk into. The pandemic, obviously, did a couple things for Chicago Scholars. Historically, we had been an organization that was very much so about in-person connection. Our students come in person monthly in workshops. So imagine our cohorts are numbering about 600 kids. And so we split that up into groups of 106 days out the month. Students are in person meeting with mentors, college counselors, and this wealth of people to support them. We had to take all of that virtual, which almost overnight to some degree. Thankfully, we had invested in some of the tools necessary to do that, but we did that. And initially, we saw a spike of engagement because we all thought that that was going to be the way that we had to engage for a short time. And so I feel like folks leaned in to the Zooms. But what we saw as the pandemic extended was a decreased amount of engagement, more social and emotional issues, and the cracks of the pandemic hit our students very hard. We raised over $200,000 to disseminate, mostly that went towards housing. Students needed, financing to help pay rent. Parents needed help paying bills. Some of that went towards transportation. If you remember what happened immediately in March of last year or 2020, students were told that they had to be home and off campuses, some within 5 days. So if you're a student from the South Side of Chicago, you don't have a lot of money, and you're told you got 5 days and you have to fly home from Harvard or Yale or whatever school you're at, we raised capital to be able to get our students home and those things. So I always say, one of the things we know, and we've seen with the issues of the pandemic and the social determinants of health that are directly tied to it, is that when the world catches a cold, the affluent world catches a cold, those that are lacking means and are in need catch the most severe version of that. Yeah. And unfortunately, in this case, it turned into COVID for many of our families and our students. And so we've tried to surround them, be intentionally kind in our approach to the work, hear where they are. One of the things we did initially was we brought all of our students together in a town hall with their families. So imagine 600 students with parents on a massive Zoom meeting, and we had conversations around what did they need in the moment. So we continued to listen because we didn't want to be prescriptive in our approach and design something that wasn't going to address the needs of our students. And you're taking that approach through this whole thing, trying to be as insightful as possible, thinking about the next 5 moves, almost like chess, while still listening and taking a human-centered, student-centered approach to the things that we've created to address the realm or the area of work that we work in, which is still access to college education, access to jobs for first-generation and low-income students.
No, I mean, a lot of things you said. When somebody catches cold, the severe version of it is caught by someone else, but you don't even have visibility into those. I think in some sense, technology has given an amplified voice for us to be aware of it. I mean, think about what is a fundamental human need outside of the basics of survival. It is recognized for my I mean, Ricardo mentioned this thing, and Lord, this is coming up to heads up, because you have focused a lot on humanity, curriculum excellence, human identity. That little test, not so much a test, is recognized names. That is a very sweet own name. When someone looks at my face and recognizes me, that is the start of a good relationship. That means they have paid attention to who I am as a person. And Lord, having spent the HDC, what a fantastic term, the human dignity curriculum that helps. You can't shape a tree, but you can always shape a plant. So in early education, you're giving life and purpose to a curriculum called I will create a personal identity. We will create a human excellence as a result of that identity. Tell us more about HDC and human dignity and hope.
Thank you, Shailu. One of the things that I want to start say is that the human dignity curriculum really emphasizes that human greatness is a work of our daily choices, which lead to the development of the person we are and become. And during the pandemic, this was something that was particularly important. And we were surprised in our organization, similar to Jeffrey, we also had a transition, really quickly. And 2020 was actually one of our best years in our organization. We had a spike in engagement globally. And it just shows one thing, that young people are really creative. When they're faced with problems, they themselves will find solutions, like siblings, sharing gadgets, just for them to attend classes, or neighbors, sharing laptops because they have to submit projects, for their classes. I think these are great examples, of how young people, were able to find really ways to help each other. And basically the HDC is a curriculum, where students learn to pursue human excellence and basically how to become a better person. One of our 5th grade students shared with us that through the curriculum, I'm beginning to understand that it is through my actions that I reveal my character. And so if I am a better person, it also inspires others to become a better person. And I think stories like this are very powerful, not just for kids, but, even for parents or for teachers, to see that, wow, these kids are pursuing excellence, like, maybe I should be, also pursuing excellence. And, it's amazing that, even during the pandemic, we've been decision many of this online. Some of the parents can even tell us, like, our children, when they go home after these classes, they're just so excited. They can't stop talking about the ideas. They talk about it to their grandma, to their siblings. They teach them, the lessons, on like friendship, human dignity. And there was a mom, who told us, like, I never learned all of this in school. And now my kid is teaching me about human dignity, about friendship. So imagine that, like a 3rd grader goes home and tells mom, like, today I learned about solidarity. And I learned, how to practice that by helping my classmate who was being bullied at school today. So I think these are powerful ideas. So, imagine the importance of, respect. Ricardo mentioned earlier, just the problem to have all this dialogue, in our society today. And I think what the HCC does is it tries to bring these young people to really go together and study, sometimes these are not these are difficult questions, like studying who we are as a human person, like, and what can we become. But ultimately, it's about respect and, pursuing excellence, because when we pursue this, we know it's not only for us, but also for other people. And so one of our students, I also want to share another example. One of our students was telling us that, in science, we would learn about volcanoes and about, like, plants, but in HDC, we learn about ourselves. And it's the first time ever that we are studying about ourselves and that we can actually become excellent. Students were like, we had one student in St. Lucius, he was like, I can't believe my teachers believe that I can become excellent. And this young girl was just so excited, going home, telling her parents, like, I can be excellent, how can I do this? And so through the HDC, they have these tools. And another student, classmate of hers, shared that, plants, animals, they all have prices. We can buy them, but humans, we are worth the infinite, and this was coming from a 2nd grader, humans are worth the infinite. And what does that mean? Now that children, they know that human dignity, everybody has human dignity. How do we translate that, in a real world? And that's the challenge for them after the curriculum. And so these are some of the stories of hope from young people. And believe it or not, Shailu, some of them, again, are young as first graders. So imagine the generation of leaders we're trying to build who are able to, not only learn about these ideas, but even practice them in their own lives, in simple ways such as sharing their gadgets. Or we had this fifth grader in the Bronx who said, before, I would just go home, use my gadgets and, use the iPad. But now I go home, I ask my mom, how can I help you clean the house or fold my clothes? Can you believe that? A fifth grader asking the mom before using the gadget. So it's pretty inspiring.
That is amazing. What is the price of human dignity is such a profound question.
Mhm.
Not just this panel, but it'll take a very long time. The oldest answers, the oldest questions are the most profound ones. I'm sure as we grew as a civilization, we had this question, it's yet an answer. But the class where the kid goes to school and comes back and says, Mom, how can I help you? I want my kids in that class, because it is not easy to convince teenagers to participate in the chores without giving them incentive. What if the incentive is coming from inside through awareness? If awareness creates action, I think it's a phenomenal journey. Thank you for sharing that. Kelly, any reflections from what you heard? That was some really lovely shares from Lon.
No, great shares from Lord. And I just thought of one, that we experienced in our home. Our middle child came home from preschool and she was talking and so excited and enthused about composting, and recycling, and here we are, college educated people, from privilege, and were we doing it? No, she got us doing it. And that's what I think Lord is saying, it's so important. And if we do the right things in the schools, and especially in these public schools, where these people, where the kids don't necessarily have a lot of exposure to some of these things, they become very quickly transformers in their own families, in their own communities, and they start being empowered as their own protagonists to solve problems in their home, solve social problems in their community. And when they start doing that, that is so powerful, because maybe they didn't notice that before, with the people that they knew, but now they're actually seeing it in themselves. And once you do a little bit, then you can do a little more, and your confidence builds, and you get a little more risky. And pretty soon you're like Ricardo running for office. And I think really through the work that we're all doing, between all of you guys and myself, it's like, if we could get more people, more good people to run for office. And I wanted to thank you, Ricardo, for serving that way, because this is, it's, to me, this is one of the most important issues these days, really,
It's kind of, as teachers, they always ask me, you're an executive coach, you get into these sessions, are you imparting lessons? And I say, let me share the secret on a public forum now. I want to learn the human journey for excellence. At various stages, they are rediscovering themselves, from very early stage, a third grader, all the way an aspiring career progression like Lord, and very accomplished work from Jeffery and Ricardo, but they have the day one excitement as if they're doing this the first time. I mean, that excitement is what, as the teachers, without realizing, you're bringing it to your students. And there's a surprise test coming, heads up. This won't be hard, but it can be a buzz around, and you can choose which one goes first. You can actually volunteer someone so that you'll find some time to think and reflect. So it has 2 questions in it, and very easy, I promise. But I did not even tell Akshay or Srini or anyone else, Srinivas, who's your favorite teacher in your personal and professional life, your personal, and a memory that really inspired kindness and said, man, that was inspiring, I should do some of that. What were those 2 things? Anyone can go first. No prizes and trophies except my heartfelt gratitude for sharing.
I'm happy to kick us off here. My favorite teacher was my 4th grade teacher, Miss Bublett. I had transferred from private school to public school when my family moved to the suburbs. And it was a little bit of a culture shock to me. Private school was very rigid. I went to private Catholic school, and so it was very structured, and public school was kind of wide open. And I was a really smart kid who was picked on and teased a lot. Actually, I got bullied quite a bit as a kid, was very poor and didn't have like the fancy clothes or fancy shoes, and moving to the neighborhood I did, a lot of those kids did. But Miss Bublett saw something in me at a very kind of young and tender age, and she really wrapped her arms around me to just show kindness to me, and the fact that I was different, the fact that I was smart. She celebrated that in me and gave me confidence to, push through a lot of that at that young age. It made me stand up and use my voice. And I'm forever grateful. I actually tried to find her a few years back to thank her. Wow. And she had passed away. But there was a website where I was able to write a message to her, and her family saw it. And her kids thanked me for that. And I told her, your mom probably inspired hundreds of people like me. And I said, a lot of what I've gone on to do in the world, the reason why I left tech, I was running a startup to go run an education nonprofit, was to make sure that I was able to help more young people just like me, who had someone that was a kind, caring adult that spoke and saw something over me. That was probably, yeah.
Our sincere gratitude and many blessings to our soul for architecting a wonderful person like you and bringing out the best in you, Jeffrey. That was an amazing share. I mean, speak of taking all your insecurities and converting them to your strengths and give you a true voice that you can share. That's brilliant. In fact, I asked the question, but I feel inspired myself as you were explaining this. I was reminded of my teachers when I was in early stage school and the impact they had in my personal and professional life. Who would go next between Ricardo, Lord, and Kelly? You're amongst friends now. We can pick on each other and push the others into the pool.
Okay, I'm not on mute, so I'll go.
All right.
I thought of a couple of names, but the first one that came to my head was Mrs. Doyle, and she was my 3rd grade teacher. And I went from public to Catholic to public to Catholic several times, back and forth in the same time, believe it or not. So Jeffrey, I identified with you there. But I used to stay in sometimes from recess and help her decorate the room or put up things like that. And on the last day of school, we were going to have a picnic, and my grandfather died, and it was not expected. And I remember the terrible, I think it was probably my first experience with death like that in the family. And I had to call up Mrs. Doyle on the phone and tell her I couldn't bring the chips to the picnic, and I was starting to cry and so sad about it. And she had heard about my grandfather before and everything. And she was so kind. You know what she did? She said, well, Kelly, that's okay. It's okay that you're not coming to the picnic. I would like to have you over for lunch one day this summer.
Oh, wow.
And she had me for lunch, and we had sandwiches at her house. But I cannot tell you how special that was for me, because it just showed the friendship that we had developed over the year, So it's not like this huge redeeming thing. It didn't change my life and everything, but that kindness in that moment, those transitional moments that we have in our lives, life and death moments, was huge. It was huge. Very cool story. And she stays with me in my heart till today,
Bless Mrs. Doyle, because she has architected again another leader. These teachers are force multipliers, which they don't even realize, similar to what you four are doing right now. The little things don't mean little, they mean a lot. A sandwich is what you get in a drive-thru in a couple of minutes, and you're eating while driving, and you don't even remember last Sunday what you had for breakfast. But this special moment of lunch you had wasn't yesterday, but it still stays fresh in your memory for a very, very long time. And it's only possible because they did not do it with any motive other than, let me spread my love and affection to this child who's going through the reality of life. It ends in not so good way at a very young age, and she helped you deal with that. So Lord, would love to hear your perspective. to memory.
Yes, I mean, listening to your, to you guys just brought a lot of memories also, from high school. And for me, it would be our high school principal, Mr. Sembran. And for me, he was a big, he's a huge part of my leadership journey because it was when I was in second year high school, when he first invited me to run for student council in my high school. And prior to that, I've never run for the student council. Just like, maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But he was the person who really believed in me, even if I had zero experience. So, he was like, you should run for senator, in the student council. And I won. And then the following year, my senior year, I run for president and I run again. So he was a huge part of my leadership journey because he showed me, that it just takes one person to believe in you, for you to actually pursue greatness. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be the leader that I am today. And, he was just not my leader in terms of this classroom, but he was also my mentor in scouting. I was an Eagle Scout in high school. I also did like army training in high school. He was also my mentor there. So he just kind of like trained me, like the whole person, like my academics, but also my extracurricular, to build me. He was really tough on me too. At times, he would really like tell me if I made mistakes. And I think that was important because at a young age, you need to make sure that when you have mistakes, you have to own them. You're not like, I'm not sure if I'm the one. Maybe it's like, someone else's mistake. I'm the president. Why are you blaming me? But he really made sure that I owned to my mistakes. And I love him for that.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, creating belief on one dimension and accountability on the other. May you run to many more offices that you think you don't need to be in yet, but trust me, Kelly was right when she said, Ricardo's and Lords, we need you in these offices. We need good-hearted, large-hearted, kind people in a public service because the voice and amplification is bigger. There's so much noise out there, but the kindest voice always stands out. We want those kindness in leadership positions. And Ricardo, would love to hear your memory jog.
Yeah, well, you guys get me thinking here. There's so many people. When I was, where do I start? I guess, I was reflecting on so many teachers, some from my first martial arts coach, which he passed away recently. And I never got my black belt. So I was thinking of training to honor him. But, when you learn martial arts, it gives you so much confidence and self security, which really changes the way you walk and how you look at things. And thankfully never had to use what I learned. But, when I was a kid, I woke up, I was born into a trilingual household. So we had English, Spanish, and Farsi. My mom was from Iran. My dad's originally from Mexico. So reading was a very bad thing. So I was in this private school and they put me like, we don't know what to do with him. He can't read. So I got a tutor, and the second grade, I transferred to a public school, and I actually got better help and much more help in the public school than I did in the private school. And I went from reading like, the initial to like 6th or 7th grade chapter books in second grade. And they actually put me as a tutor for the younger kids. And that's because I got the help I needed, because I was a special student and I needed that extra help. So I went from, being the pack of the class to, being, the guy who read the most books in the second grade. And if I didn't have those teachers to support me and those extra services, usually, the middle is always okay, but the people at the far extreme on the right, the ones that are super, who excel too much, usually end up being the troublemakers, such as myself, because they get bored. On the other hand, the people who fall behind is because they don't understand and they can't engage. So, if you focus on those two, the impact is huge. And I think that the teaching, you have the bottom of the pack and the top of the pack. And it doesn't mean the bottom of the pack is not intelligent. They just, have a different way of learning.
Right.
My biggest weakness was my handwriting. My handwriting is terrible. So I'd always fail anything that was written. And then, but luckily now everything's typed. So I didn't become more intelligent. They just let me type it. So if teachers didn't give me that extra help, there are just so many teachers to name that have been part of my journey. So, and we can always learn. I mean, we never stop. So there's always more to learn, and there's always more teachers that come and show up a different path in your journey. And sometimes I'm at that, kind of that inflection point, which now I'm kind of teaching the next generation, and that's kind of exciting. It takes a lot of responsibility, a lot of moral and ethical things, and you think of things, and it's fantastic. It really is, to see someone grow and the thirst for knowledge. And I think everyone is excited to learn and grow, and I'm very grateful. I am very grateful for all the teachers that have come into my life.
Well, thanks to all those teachers, because when we call you the glue of Harvard, it's a big ocean, and the kindness and empathy that you create in people who come from many geographies. I know we get people from so many countries. I had to literally buy the world map to look at how many of these classmates are coming from which country, and the awareness was amazing. But they had one thing in common: everybody knew Ricardo. There was not a single guy who did not know Ricardo. And it almost feels, how can someone connect with everyone is only possible because your teachers shaped you that way. There was a word called special back in the day, which meant you are special. Now they use special needs. They kind of changed the definition of words itself, but we just have to look at the word in a different way, that every human is special. The price of a human is infinite. Brilliant words. Because I asked you the surprise test, and as we wind up this talk, it's only fair that I share my favorite teacher. They come in a pair, mom and dad. One's dad is up in heaven. He watches over what the teacher's doing here. He learned very nicely through strong education. He was a doctor in public service, and he taught me the art of communication, expressing what's inside you so people understand you. Mom taught me the art of learning and listening. I'm still yet to get better on this. She told me as of this morning, I definitely have a chat with her on important days. Days my opportunity for learning is exponential, like today. So I called her this morning and said, Mom, I'm meeting these fascinating people. I have to ask them something that will jog their memory. So she gave me this tip. By the way, her name is Ananta, which actually means infinity. So mom is the ocean we can always count on. As a teacher, you can go back to and ask. And she said, ask something about their teacher. That might open up a lot of memory lanes. And storytelling is how we have evolved as humans. If we want to bring kindness and purpose in everyone we connect in the community across the planet, if we want to partner for peace, these stories, these memory lanes are what we need to continue doing, not on World Kindness Day, but celebrate it on that day. And these discussions, I think, bring to fore. So while I thank my teacher, the mom on earth, and the teacher above in heaven, my dad, I wanted to make sure that we thank a lot of people who put this together. The crew that was furiously working on Zoom and getting this together, Akshay and Surya and Srini and Sai and Veena, they were working furiously on emails, putting everything together, the crazy schedules that were running around our professional lives. And one thing that stood out was they enjoy this thing. It wasn't like work. They enjoy scrambling and putting this together, because this recording we have in the last exact 60 minutes is almost a legacy that you guys have created for not yourself or your students, but also a mark of respect to your teachers, be it Mr. Tim, Mrs. Doyle. All these folks have in one sense become an infinite part of our world, and so many people who will watch this video. So thanking the United Nations who came up with these wonderful 17 sustainable development goals, 4th of them being the quality education. Thanks for teaching me a ton of things and allowing us a walk into your memory lanes. Thanking Ricardo, Jeffery, Kelly, and Lord on behalf of TAL Radio, TAL Media, the whole TAL organizations. We sign off with a heart full of love, kindness, and warmth, and wishing you the best of luck, whether you're running into a class or running for office, whether you're jogging into an Ironman marathon or bringing voice to Chicago, which by the way is still biased in this city, guys. We will definitely meet up. I wanted to extend in final 10 seconds a warm welcome to Chicago. Please do come over. as our thank you, and to California for the TAL team, and India where Surya, Srini, and Akshay are working on making sure that they record, present it as the best version of ourselves. I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening. Thanking you again and looking forward to more of these conversations. Happy kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shailu. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Ricardo. And thanks a lot, Jeffrey. Really appreciate having you all over here. Thanks a lot. It's been a good juggle through, but obviously just a few last words before we wrap up. You guys are like lighthouses for all the ships that are out there in the ocean, and you enlighten every other person that is there. And all of us are looking forward to you, and it's great to have an honor to have you on our panel over here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Be in touch.
Yeah.